Parchhayee, meaning shadow, is an anthology of ghost stories, with the themes of love, loss, loyalty, and revenge. The 12-episode series has actually been adapted from stories by the well-known author Ruskin Bond. While the episodes explored themes such as the loss of eternal love to a servant being loyal to his master even after his death, we experienced several jump scares along the way. Parchhayee is a series of chilling supernatural stories that will leave you on the edge of your seat in a nail-biting experience. Without any delay, let's explore the darkest episodes of Parchhayee, Ghost Stories by Ruskin Bond, an Indian series of chilling supernatural stories that will leave you on the edge of your seat in a nail-biting experience. Without any delay, let's explore the 4 episodes of this Indian web series that stand out as the best and darkest episodes. Before we go forward, please consider subscribing to us. It may be a small click from you, but it goes a long way for us. Moving on. Number 1, The Overcoat, Episode 3. A Christmas party introduces us to Julie, a beautiful woman who looks a little lost and doesn't know anyone at the party. Nick, who has just returned from London, is an architect who is blown away by Julie's beauty and approaches her, quickly forming a bond.
आपको लगता है घरों के भी जज्बात होते हैं?
Well, I think घरों के जज्बात उनमें रहने वालों से बनते हैं.
Meanwhile, the dark history of the house is revealed. It once belonged to a family whose son died at war, and one of the ladies admits that she could feel the presence of a spirit. As Julie leaves the party, Nick follows her, offering to walk her back home. While she does agree, she doesn't let him take her all the way home, making sure he leaves her at a distance away.
मेरा घर नजदीक है, मैं चली जाऊंगी.
He also offers his overcoat, and the chilly weather is more than enough for Julie to accept the offer. As we watch him walk away, he turns around to take one last look at Julie, but she's long gone already. After this night, Julie and Nick meet several times, getting to know each other better.
खूबसूरत. एक लड़की के साथ हो, खूबसूरत तो बोलना आना चाहिए.
खूबसूरत.
Better.
Until one day, she doesn't show up. Curious and concerned, Nick goes over to her house with flowers, where he sees an old lady walking by. On inquiring, she tells him that no one has lived in this house in a very long time.
यहाँ तो कोई नहीं रहता.
And the last people who did had a daughter named Julie, who had sadly passed away after fiancé's death. Nick realizes that the Julie he had been talking to was merely a ghost, or perhaps a figment of his imagination. He visits her grave, where he places the flowers, and that's where he finds his overcoat. This episode introduces us to a ghost who is very different from the ones we usually see. She isn't scary looking, she doesn't cause anyone any harm, and she is full of love and joy. Julie is only out on a cold winter night, looking for the love that she once lost. This episode was about love, loss, and hope. Wait for Astley, Episode 5. Prem Bahadur is the caretaker of an incredibly large mansion, and he is extremely timely with everything he does. He sets the table for his boss and sits down on the floor next to the chair, and that's when the chair moves, along with the fork, without the presence of an actual human, revealing at the very beginning that there is a ghost or an entity present. It turns out that the mansion belongs to Robert Astley, who has passed away decades ago, but Prem stayed, taking care of the house, even after his master's death.
Robert Astley.
One day, Prem's family comes to visit him, and begins convincing him to come home with him, but Prem refuses, blinded and bound by his loyalty to Astley. While Prem spends time with his grandson, his daughter and her husband decide to snoop around, trying to find an envelope that Astley left behind, but the ghost of Astley physically harms the husband, scaring them away. Things go back to how they were supposed to be. Prem goes back to his routine until one night at dinner, Robert Astley walks in.
आज मेरे बगैर पी लिया प्रेम.
He looks young, as if no time has passed. They dine and drink together, and then Astley takes Prem to his little bed outside, where we see Prem's body, revealing that he had passed away.
क्यों पहचाने नहीं? ये तुम हो प्रेम. चलो प्रेम. बहुत हो.
Astley and Prem walk out of the mansion together, closing this chapter. Astley's ghost was kind to one person, the one who stayed loyal to him the whole time, his caretaker, Prem Bahadur. Beyond that, Astley was the kind of spirit who would hurt anyone who tried to disrupt the peace in his house, for instance, Prem's daughter and son-in-law. Despite them trying to break into his study, he only hurt the son-in-law, barely injuring him, which showed that Astley cared for Prem just like Prem did for Astley. This episode was about undying loyalty.
जितने साल तुम मेरा इंतजार कर रहे थे, मैं भी तुम्हारा इंतजार कर रहा था.
Number 3, Topaz, Episode 7. Jayant steps into a forest village, but he sees more than just trees and animals in the forest, and does not have any eco-friendly intentions. Upon his arrival, he is joined by Sridhar and Singh, two village folks who are here to guide him. While Sridhar seems to know anything and everything, Singh is more skeptical and warns him about the forest, telling him that there is an entity that protects it, and anyone who tries to harm the forest doesn't make it out alive. He even gives him the example of the man who came before Jayant and died mysteriously after he ventured into the forest. Jayant also runs into a beautiful woman named Hamida, who warns him, letting him know it isn't safe.
क्यों?
वहाँ जाना ठीक नहीं.
Despite all these red flags, Sridhar and Jayant venture into the forest, and not before long, Sridhar kills a wild rabbit and hands it over to a gypsy, who invites them back to her hut. She lives with her injured father and later tells them that they should come by later at night for dinner. As night falls, Sridhar heads for the forest, but Jayant stays back, and the next morning, Sridhar is missing. Jayant confides in Hamida, who offers to help him but eventually leaves, and that's when Jayant stumbles upon Sridhar's dead body. That night, Jayant is seduced by the gypsy, and when he refuses all her advances, she disappears into thin air. Curious about everything that is happening, Jayant talks to some villagers, asking about Hamida, and that's when they tell him that Hamida is the protector of the forest and a spirit. The episode ends with Jayant resigning from his job, unwilling to harm the forest as he goes back home safely.
ये जंगल सुरक्षित और संरक्षित रहे. ये जरूरी नहीं बल्कि सही भी है.
आजा.
Hamida is an entity that harms those who harm the forest. We see her as a little girl, as the gypsy, and as Hamida. She spares Jayant and chooses to help him instead when she sees that he means no harm, but as for Sridhar, who killed the wild rabbit, she makes sure he pays for it. While Hamida is a protector, to the audience, she still is a ghost, who one doesn't want to mess with. Number 4, Gunpot Story, Episode 8. This story revolves around a crime photographer who is trying to make ends meet, barely able to feed his family. His wife is constantly disappointed by his career and the lack of funds at home. One night, Gunpot, the crime photographer, heads to a large mansion where someone was murdered. After finishing his job, he goes back home and has a huge fight with his wife. Later that night, he heads back to the mansion, and that's when he comes across the ghost of a woman wearing a black sari, and she makes him an offer. She offers him a diamond in exchange for his loyalty. He doesn't think twice before accepting this offer, knowing he could use the diamond for his family. She also makes it very clear that if he fails to keep his end of the deal, she will have to kill him. The first few nights, when the clock strikes 12, he goes back to the mansion and spends the night with the ghost, in exchange for a diamond. However, one night when he is unable to, she comes to his home, injuring his wife as she throws her down the stairs. Gunpot makes up an excuse, reassuring his wife that nothing is wrong. As the episode progresses, things only get worse when the ghost scares his kid, which forces Gunpot to come clean to his wife, but it's too late. She has taken the wife and kid away, and when Gunpot follows her to the mansion, he realizes she has turned them into dolls. After breaking down, he convinces her to spare his life, offering his loyalty for all of eternity.
मुझे जीने दो, मैं जिंदगी भर तुम्हारी गुलामी करूंगा.
At the end of the episode, we learn a little more about the ghost. She was a woman who was killed by her husband, and all he left beside her was his necklace full of diamonds. She now tries and garners men and their loyalties in exchange for those diamonds. We see several dolls in the mansion, which helps us understand that over the years, she has killed many people, all for revenge and maybe a little bit of peace.
बट पूरी स्टोरी सुन ली है तो अब तो अंदर जाने दो.
That was all in this video. Do hang around for more awesome horror content from around the world. Stay safe and have a good one.
तुम्हें डर तो नहीं लगेगा?